It's been a fun, exciting, and fruitful offseason for Tennessee football, but what were some of the best moments? We're going to count them down 10 down to 1 best moments of the Tennessee football offseason right now on a Thursday, Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, good Thursday morning, everybody. This is Locked On Vols, and I am Eric Kane. Happy to have you guys here making Locked On Vols your first listen, your first watch each and every single day. For free, download us, subscribe to us, follow us, listen to us, all that and more, wherever you get your podcast, and of course on the Locked On Vols YouTube channel. Got a fun show coming up, top 10 moments in Vols offseason, top 5 difference makers for Tennessee this fall, and we're going to dive down into it. What exactly is the curse of the number 1 overall seed in college baseball? It's obviously very impactful because Tennessee's the number 1 overall seed entering postseason play. So what exactly is that? When was the last time the number 1 overall seed actually won a college baseball national championship? That and more's coming up in segment number 3. Appreciate you guys as always at _Kaner at Locked On Vols, where you can follow the show. And I wanted to dive into this offseason as a whole. Kind of what were the bigger moments for Tennessee football in this offseason? And I wanted to count them down from 10 down to 1. We've got additions, we've got hires, we've got court proceedings, and we got a whole lot of good stuff. And really the number 1 thing on this list, you could kind of make the argument that it was not necessarily the offseason, but we'll get to that here in a moment. Starting at number 10, working our way down to number 1. Number 10, Ethan Utley commits to the University of Tennessee, 4-star rated defensive lineman from Ensworth High School right here in Nashville, Tennessee in the mid-state. And this is big for a number of reasons. Number 1, I think he's a good prospect. Number 2, you can never have enough linemen, and you are going to be losing a number of defensive linemen off a unit for Rodney Garner that I think is going to be one of the better ones in the country, if not the best unit in the country. You need to replenish and all that, but more so than anything, it's a top 150 player in the country, right? Depending on kind of where you look, and you got to keep those highly touted 4-stars. If they're from your state, you got to keep them in state. That's the biggest thing, and you know, he was one that was constantly brought up about in-state prospects and all that, but earlier in the year, I think it was towards the end of March, he did make his commitment for the class of 2025. Ethan Utley committing to University of Tennessee. That is number 10 on my list. Number 9, the addition of Holden Staes from Notre Dame to come play tight end at the University of Tennessee. I beat on that drum every single season during the football part of the calendar, how important the tight end position is for the University of Tennessee. And sure, it's not as glamorous. You're not going to have 100-yard games receiving, but you kind of look at the stats, and your 2 tight ends last year, Tennessee plays 2, and they split them almost 50-50 and have since, Jacob Warren to Princeton Fant, Jacob Warren to McCallum Castles last year. Those 2 guys combined for 9 touchdowns last year. So a lot of people want to say, well, the tight end isn't really involved in the passing game. I would beg to differ very, very much so. You're not going to have 100-yard receiving games, but you're going to be impactful in the offense and score some touchdowns if your quarterback trusts you. And that's kind of how the combo was last year. But you lost both Jacob Warren, who you could teach a doctorate class on the position here in this offense because he's done it for 3 years with Josh Heupel, and not Princeton Fan, he was already gone, but McCallum Castles. So you needed somebody else to come in because you had Ethan Davis, and he was great last year, but he redshirted. He didn't play an awful lot, and I think he's going to be really, really good. But you needed a running mate with Ethan Davis, and that's why I think Holden Staes, who was Tennessee's number 1 tight end target in the transfer portal, brought in him and Jordan Dingle. They were on campus, not necessarily at the same time, but in the span of the same couple of days, and they both had official visits, and it was going to be first one gets the spot, right? It was Holden Staes that committed, and actually Jordan Dingle was on his visit. He left and went back to Kentucky and entered the transfer, or jumped back out of the transfer portal. So Holden Staes, important player in this offense. I think he's going to be pretty solid. Had a pretty good spring. He comes in at number 9. Number 8, the addition of JerMod McCoy. I think he's going to be a stud, point blank. One of the better freshmen in all of college football last year. I believe he was a freshman All-American. It's been a minute since he's committed. I have to go back and review, but over there at Oregon State from the state of Texas, a really, really good player, and he's got years of eligibility left, 3 years of eligibility left. I think he's going to be one of those impact players for this new look Tennessee secondary. JerMod McCoy coming to Tennessee via the transfer portal is at number 8. Number 7 is the 2 hires of the assistant coaches. Going to group them together. Darrell Sims, running backs, and William Inge, linebackers. 2 different style of coaches maybe. It was really, really neat kind of being around William Inge a little bit more in spring practice because, again, I didn't know who he was, and he was different from kind of how I pictured him in my mind. But, very much a player's coach, very communicative. He's been around the block a time or two. Experience. We got to see how he recruits in the SEC, but experience. Darrell Sims, up-and-comer, vibrant, energy, player's coach as well, but demands excellence. I know him, I won't say very, very well, but I'm familiar with Darrell Sims because he was at Carson Newman for a year when I was at Carson Newman. And I've spoken to him a couple times since he's been here at Tennessee. Good guy. Different coaches, good guys, but if you're replacing two of Tennessee's better assistant coaches who left, and Jerry Mack and Brian Jean-Marie, I like these two additions. I do. I think that these two coaches will do well here at Tennessee, and I think Darrell Sims is going to be a star. That's at number 7. Number 6, the return of Brazzell McCoy. Sure, Brew was really, really good in 2022. 2023, his season was cut short, obviously, just about a third of the way through the year, and it was really unfortunate for him because he, was out for so long, and it was, but coming back, and I know there's a lot of options there. I'm not trying to say Brazzell McCoy is a first-round wide receiver, but he's a veteran in this offense. He knows this offense, and he knows Nico very well, and he's gotten a whole lot of reps with Nico, and I think he can be a calming presence for Nico in his first year as a true starting quarterback. And also, I think Brazzell McCoy is pretty good, and now that he's healthy, he's going to be pushing to be Tennessee's number one option, and I think that was a big get for the University of Tennessee to have Brazzell McCoy announce that he was coming back. That's number 6. Number 5, the addition of Chris Brazzell. Will Chris Brazzell be that number one wide receiver in Tennessee's offense this year? Will it be Brazzell McCoy? Will it be Dante Thornton, who might have had the best? And I've thought about putting Dante Thornton's spring practice emergence on this list. I held it out, but he arguably had the best spring practices of anybody on the roster. Of course, we have Squirrel White, who, I don't necessarily view number one wide receivers as slot receivers, but talk about volume and production, Squirrel White. My point is, Chris Brazzell, who has multiple years of eligibility and can play with Nico for a couple years, coming over from Tulane, has been there, done that. He's not in the SEC, but he's put up numbers, and that's more than you can say from Dante Thornton coming over from Oregon last year. Really, really like the skill set from Chris Brazzell. Took him a minute, when spring practice first started, and that's okay, but he came on strong and looked really, really good in the process. I think he can be a playmaker for Tennessee. Number 4, Lance Hurd. You had to have an offensive tackle. High-end offensive tackle. Got a little bit of PT last year with LSU, but he was playing behind 2 NFL offensive tackles and who elected to, come back and increase their stock. He just wanted to play. Former 5-star rated prospect, the number 1 overall rated prospect in the class of 2023 for LSU. The 1 overall was Nico, of course, in the country, but the top signee for the class of 23 for LSU was Lance Hurd. Now he's coming to Tennessee, and I think he's going to be really, really good. He was a big-time target for Tennessee, obviously, and Tennessee got him, and I thought that was monumental. Number 3, George MacIntyre commits. 5-star rated quarterback, according to the On3 industry rankings. Number 18 prospect in the country, 4th quarterback, obviously number 1 in the state of Tennessee. This offense, you got to get your quarterback. You got to have a quarterback that can go and work with Josh Heupel and Joey Halsley. You saw it with Hendon. You hope you're going to see it with Nico. You want to look to the future with George. And George is, joining this class, committing on January the 22nd. And now he's a leader in trying to bring other talent, such as 5-star offensive tackle David Sanders, to Tennessee. Never a bad idea when you get your quarterback in the boat early to let him be that straw that stirs the drink. Huge for Tennessee early in the offseason. George MacIntyre commits to Tennessee for the class of 2025. Number 2, the state of Tennessee winning the injunction case against the NCAA. Of course, Tennessee and Virginia, the states, filed an injunction with the NCAA and took them to court. And Tennessee, the appeal won. And essentially what it was that you can discuss monetary gains and NIL deals before they sign with your collective and they decide to come to your team. Just like if I was going to take another job, I would want to know what I was getting paid before I went and did that job. There was a huge win because, number 1, that's how you should do things. But number 2, it means the NCAA can't retroactively go back and punish the University of Tennessee for doing that in the past. Huge win, not just for Tennessee, but for college football and college athletics nationwide. I mean, Tennessee was kind of marching and leading that charge for everybody across the country. Huge win earlier in the offseason in March. And then number 1, And again, you can kind of make the argument that this is not necessarily offseason, but I pretty much count bowl games as offseason. Sorry, I do. Nico getting the start against Iowa, and Nico performing the way that he did in his first career start in the bowl game, the Citrus Bowl, nonetheless. He didn't have to do too much with his arm. He did enough. It wasn't bad. He threw for about 160 yards. I think he was like 14 of 17, threw for a touchdown. Extending plays with his legs, a couple of design quarterback runs. He scraped up a defense that was one of the nation's best, especially against the run, where he rushed for 3 touchdowns and threw for another. He had 4 total touchdowns. Nico's coming out party against Iowa was huge and really kind of propelled Tennessee into the offseason and looking ahead to the official Nico era. So those are my top 10 moments of the offseason. What say you? Number 10, Ethan Utley commits. Number 9, Holden Staes commits from the transfer portal. Number 8, JerMod McCoy commits from the transfer portal. Number 7, the hiring of assistant coaches, Darrell Sims, William Inge. Number 6, we have Brew McCoy returns. Number 5, Chris Brazzell from the transfer portal. Number 4, Lance Hurd from the transfer portal. Number 3, George MacIntyre commits to the class of 2025. Number 2, the state of Tennessee wins the injunction case against the NCAA. And number 1, quarterback Nico Iamaleava starts and balls out against Iowa in the Citrus Bowl. What say you? Would love to hear what you consider the top 10 moments of Tennessee's 2024 to 25 offseason at _Caner and at Lockdown Vols. Hey, when we come back, we're going to get into the top 5 playmakers, difference makers, who are going to step up for Tennessee in a big way in 2024 this football season. That's coming up next as we continue on here with a Thursday Locked On Vols. Want to tell you about our friends over at Game Time. If you go to Game Time, download that app, put in the promo code LOCKEDONCollege, you're going to get $20 off your first purchase. What is Game Time? It's an app where you can buy tickets to all the events in your area. Sure, it could be sporting events. It could be Tennessee baseball, softball, and Tennessee football and basketball and all that and more throughout the calendar year, but it can also be the concerts that are happening over there at the Food City Center at Thompson-Boling Arena. It can be comedy shows. It could be theater. Whatever the case may be, you can buy tickets to those events in your area by using the Game Time app. And what they offer on the Game Time app, incredible stuff. Last-minute deals, flash deals, zone deals, all-in prices, views from your seats, the lowest price guarantee, where if you find a cheaper ticket, and sometimes I go on there and see if I can find a cheaper ticket than I found the one on the Game Time app, and if you find one in the same section, they're going to credit you, this being Game Time, 110% of that value. Lowest price guarantee, they got it over the Game Time app. Plus, Game Time ticket coverage, where your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. What are you waiting on? Download the Game Time app, create an account, put in the promo code LOCKEDONCollege, and you're going to get $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. More of your Thursday Locked On Vols when we return right here on a Thursday. Okay, so let's shift gears here. We talked top 10 moments of the Tennessee Volunteers football offseason. Let's talk about who I think the top 5 difference makers for Tennessee football are going to be in 2024. And again, this list is up for debate, right? These are my 5. Would love to hear your 5 at _Caner at Locked On Vols. You guys know those DMs are open. You can go ahead and slide right on in and, of course, comment on the YouTube channel here. I'll start with number 5 and work our way down. I think we can all put our heads together and know who number 2 and number 1 are going to be. But we'll save it, right? Number 5, actually, let's flip it. Since we all know who number 1 and number 2 are going to be, let's flip it because the suspense can be for 3, 4, and 5. Number 1, of course, is going to be Nico Iamaleava. He's your quarterback. We saw what an elite quarterback can do in this offense and how good this team can be with Hendon Hooker. Okay? We saw what a average to good quarterback could be in this offense. Everybody wants to talk about like the world was falling. I get it. Expectations shouldn't be 8-4, but everybody wants to talk about how that was just a horrendous year. 8-4. Okay. If a horrendous year for Josh Heupel is 8-4, sign me up. Don't want to make a habit out of it, but sign me up. But you saw with the level of quarterback play, kind of the diminishing some wins. Now, if Nico is who we think Nico is, then you're going to be right back up at that elite level. And Tennessee is going to be contending for a spot in the 12-team college football playoff. Tennessee is going to be contending for a spot in Atlanta to play for an SEC title. It's going to be good things. But Nico's got to be who we think he is. 5-star, number 1 overall player in the country in the class of 2024. The rumored $8 million man. I mean, there's going to be some expectations and obviously some pressure on Nico. But I do think that he has what it takes, and I think he's going to be a stud in this offense. And he had a really, really good spring. He had a great first start against Iowa, and he's taken the steps to be a leader for this football team, not just in the huddle, not just for the offense, but for the team overall. So number one is obviously going to be Nico Iamaleava, the quarterback. Number two, James Pierce. I think he's the most feared defender in college football. I think he's the best pass rusher in college football, and I think at this point in time, if they were having the 2025 NFL draft today, he might be the number one overall draft pick. He would probably be the first overall pick on the defensive side of the football for sure. His ability to get back to the quarterback, we've had Max Chadwick of Pro Football Focus on the show a couple of times, and he's spoken so highly of James Pierce and why he likes him from an analytical standpoint and, watching film and kind of grading everything. And the thing about James Pierce is, man, he's kind of just doing it on athleticism. He's still raw, and we knew that coming out of high school as a prospect, and that's kind of why Joshua Josephs took that first leap at the Leo position as a true freshman. He was getting some PT behind, Byron Young. He was getting some PT behind Roman Harrison as a true freshman when James Pierce was just coming in and mop-up duties and playing special teams. But a year into the system, a year with the coaches, strength and conditioning, we saw that leap that James Pierce made, and boy, was it a big one. Double-digit sacks, most TFLs from a defensive lineman in the SEC. Just phenomenal the way he graded out according to Pro Football Focus, and what he did causing turnovers. I mean, the Kamal Hadden pick six is because of James Pierce. James Pierce, most feared pass rusher, most feared defender in college football, in my opinion. So he is certainly a difference maker, and he's going to be there at number two. So let's go to number three. We got Nico at 1, James Pierce at 2. Who's the third best difference maker in my list for Tennessee football in 2024? Well, I think it's going to be Squirrel White. Had this conversation about it in segment number 1. Like, I view in my mind number one receivers as being the number one outside, right? But you can also view number one wide receivers in terms of production and yards and catches, and that's Squirrel White, right? I mean, he doubled in terms of catches. He doubled Ramel Keaton, who finished second on the team with whatever catches he had in the regular season. Squirrel White had double that amount. Now, Ramel Keaton had more touchdowns, but whoever plays the slot position in this offense is going to be used an awful lot. Velus Jones in year 1 with Hendon Hooker was used a ton. Yes, I know Cedric Tillman was as well. Cedric Tillman was Hendon's guy. I'm not trying to say he wasn't. But the slot position is going to get a lot of volume. Jalen Hyatt in 2022, a ton of volume. Squirrel White with Joe Milton last year, a ton of volume. Squirrel White's good. He's quick. He's agile. He's not afraid. He's 5'9", like 160. He's not afraid to get hit over the middle. He's the guy I want on my team. He is a difference maker in this offense. So Squirrel White comes in there at number 3 on my list. Number 4 is going to be Dylan Sampson, the new RB1. Kind of set in the back, watch a little bit. He was kind of the third option in that three-headed monster in the backfield behind Jalen Wright, behind Jabari Small. But at points in times in 2023, he kind of surpassed Jabari Small. He had a really strong fourth quarter to kind of seal the game for Tennessee on the road at Kentucky. He had a really solid bowl game as well. I like Dylan Sampson. I think he's got a lot to offer. Of course, he had 4 total touchdowns against Virginia in the season opener. He's a really good player, and I'm intrigued to see what he looks like with the usage of RB1 and kind of what the running back carries will be like behind him, because we know that Cam Seldon's not going to be full go for the start of the season likely. So kind of what's that look like behind him with Deshaun Bishop or Khalifa Keith or Peyton Lewis? He's going to have to really shoulder the load an awful lot here to begin the season. But I do like him a lot. I think he's got a lot to offer, and that's why I think he's going to be at number 4 in terms of difference makers on my list. And then finally at number 5, you can go a number of different directions here. You could go another wide receiver. You could go another defender, maybe another defensive lineman, because that group's going to be so good. You could go Ricky Gibson or Jamal McCoy in the back end, because I think both those cornerbacks are going to be good. But I went right in the middle, and I went to a veteran that hasn't played a whole lot of football for Tennessee. Give me Keenan Peely. I like his game. I like what he brings to the room. He's the Uncle Grandpa, what William Inge calls him, and jokes around with him. He's obviously the oldest guy in the room. He was a part of BYU's class of 2016. Of course, he went on the 2-year mission, then came back. He redshirted, had hurt, and medical redshirt, and that's why he's still hanging around, plus the COVID year. It truly is a scene to see how long players can stay in the college game right now during this era. But Tennessee needs a captain on defense. And I think Aaron Beasley, though he got off to a really, really good start last year, I think Aaron Beasley was hurt all year long, kind of playing through nagging injuries and was having to play both the Mike and the Will and trying to lead a bunch of freshmen around. And I mean, it was tough on him at times. You need a captain in the middle of that defense. You need somebody that's a solid force and a guy that has played really well in space since being here at Tennessee, both in camp, practice sessions, and a little bit against Virginia, the one game that he's played. I like that calming presence in the middle of your defense, a defense that I hope takes another step this upcoming season and can be a reason Tennessee wins some games as well, to kind of couple with that high-powered offense that you hope returns. So number 5 for me is going to be Keenan Peely. So my 5 difference makers for Tennessee football in 2024, in reverse order, number 5 is the linebacker Keenan Peely. Number 4 is running back Dylan Sampson. Number 3 is wide receiver Squirrel White. Number 2 is edge rusher James Pierce. And number 1 is quarterback Nico Iamaleava. What say you? Who are your top 5 difference makers for the University of Tennessee in 2024? We'd love to hear it at _Caner and at Locked On Vols. Hey, when we come back, let's dive down into something that's a hot topic right now in terms of baseball. It is the curse of the number 1 overall seed. Is there anything to it? Well, we're going to dive into the numbers here. We'll get into that more here in segment number 3 of a Thursday show. University of Tennessee was named the top overall seed heading into the NCAA baseball tournament. It's good, right? It's deserving. Tennessee was co-champions of the regular season in the Southeastern Conference. Tennessee went on a run and won the SEC tournament this past weekend. Tennessee leads the nation in home runs. Tennessee, I believe, is top 5 in ERA. Tennessee baseball is a great team, and so it's deserving. And as I wrote in the 321 over at VolQuest.com on Wednesday, there was, by the time you got to Friday and especially Saturday, there was no ifs, ands, buts about it. Tennessee, you knew, was going to be the number 1 overall, ranked team in the field. And there's a difference here. It's not number 1 in just the rankings. This is the number 1 overall seed entering the field of 64, entering the NCAA postseason play. So that's great. Should be celebrated. However, if you follow college baseball, you know that in recent memory, number 1 overall seed, you kind of want to steer away from that, right? Because the number 1 overall seed has not won a national championship in a long time. How long has it been since the number 1 overall seed won a national championship? Well, it's been almost 25 years. 24 years and 11 months and some amount of days. It's been since 1999 when the Miami Hurricanes won the College World Series as the number 1 overall seed. Man, that's really kind of hard to believe, to be completely honest with you. The number 1 overall seed, the perceived best team in the nation going into the postseason play, has not won the college baseball national championship, the College World Series, in nearly 25 years. Last one to do it was Miami in 1999. That is truly incredible. And we know this a little bit. Tennessee was the number 1 overall seed entering the field back in 2022. 2022. And, Tennessee, of course, bowed out to Notre Dame in super regional play. So what are these number 1 overall seeds? How have they fared in postseason play since the last time a team has won the College World Series as the number 1 overall team in the country? Well, 6 times teams have bowed out in super regional play. 3 times teams have bowed out in regional play, which would not be good at all. If you're the number 1 overall, seed in the country and you can't make it out of your own regional, that's not good. 12 times they've advanced onto the College World Series and just, been put out before winning a national championship. And twice the number 1 overall seed has been the College World Series runner-up, meaning they made it all the way to the end phase in Omaha, and they were playing the best of a 3-game series against whoever else it was and came up short. And both times, the number 1 overall ranked seed in the country finished runner-up in the College World Series during this time. It was Texas. The Longhorns did it back in 2004 and in 2009. So I'm not big on superstitions. I'm not big on, jinxes or curses or whatever, because I don't think anything. That's why we're talking about, like with Tennessee and Florida. I say it every single year. This Tennessee football team has no bearing, has nothing to do with last year's Tennessee football team or the year before that's Tennessee football team. It's just not how it works. However, you look at trends, and it's truly remarkable to see kind of what's been going on here. In 2023, this past year, Wake Forest entered the field as the top overall seed, and it finished third in the College World Series. Of course, we know about Tennessee in 2022, but there were 3 straight years where the number 1 overall seed in the country didn't make it out of supers. Tennessee in 2022, Arkansas in 2021, and UCLA in 2019. You had Florida, Oregon State, and Florida again bow out in the College World Series, but didn't win the national championship. That was from 2018 to 2016. Back-to-back years, the number 1 overall seed in the land didn't even make it out of their own regional. That was UCLA in 2015 and Oregon State in 2014. Then he had a run of 6 years where the number 1 overall seed actually made it to Omaha, but didn't win the whole thing. Vanderbilt in 2007 couldn't get out of its own regional. That's embarrassing for Vanderbilt. 3 years before that, they made it to Omaha. The one seed did, but couldn't win it. The 2 years before that, in 2002 and 2003, Florida State, both years couldn't make it out of its own regional as the number 1 overall seed. Super regional as the number 1 overall seed. South Carolina bowed out in 2000 in Supers. Cal State Fullerton bowed out in Omaha, finished 3rd overall in 2001. And then, of course, in 1999, it was Miami, the number 1 overall team in the country, who won the national championship. So, again, it's just something to track here. Doesn't mean that you should have any less faith in Tennessee to win this year, because I think Tennessee, as we heard from Joe Healy, D1 Baseball, in yesterday's show, Tennessee was his pick. He thinks Tennessee's the most complete team in the country, and it might not be the most dangerous team in the country on the mound or the most dangerous lineup in the nation, although I think it's one of the best lineups in the nation. It's very well-rounded, and it's coached well, and you've got depth. And so many teams, as Joe mentioned yesterday, you get to this phase in the season, you don't see 9, 10, 11, 12. You see 8, but you don't see 10, 11, 12 position players play like Tennessee does. And Tennessee has that. Tennessee has that for sure. And Tennessee, there's no reason not to think Tennessee can't buck this trend here this year. But I thought it was interesting. Wanted to bring it on the show because I said I would look it up and I said I would get specific about it. But the curse of the number 1 overall seed, it's real. Can top-seeded Tennessee become the first number 1 overall seed since seeding was introduced in 1999 to win a national title? We will see. Tennessee's path to Omaha, path to a national championship, begins this Friday, 7 o'clock on the SEC Network, as Tennessee plays host to 4th seed Northern Kentucky in the Knoxville Regional. And, of course, we'll talk about all of Tennessee's regional play on Monday's Locked On Vols. We'll preview it on Friday, talk about Northern Kentucky, Indiana, and Southern Miss. We'll give you a preview on Friday. We'll recap all that on Monday's show, and we'll see if Tennessee can get going in the right direction. I have faith in the Volunteers because I think they are really, really good. All right, that is going to do it here for this edition of Locked On Vols. Can't thank you enough for making Locked On Vols your first listen, your first watch each and every single day. You can watch us, listen to us, subscribe to us, download us, follow us, all that for free wherever you get your podcasts, and of course on the Locked On Vols YouTube channel. We'll come back. We'll get you set for Knoxville Regional tomorrow. We'll have a guest on, hopefully, and talk about whatever else is new in the world of sports regarding Tennessee athletics. That's coming up on your Friday edition of Locked On Vols. Can't thank you enough, guys. We'll do it again tomorrow. This is Locked On Vols.